So my name is Allison Gitlin. I am the Grand Canyon Program Manager for Sierra Club's Grand Canyon or Arizona chapter. And I'm going to talk a little bit today. I am a 24-year Flagstaff resident. And I do not have the connection to the mountain that some of the earlier speakers do, but I am very offended by what I see are actions that have harmed people who I care about, harmed many of my neighbors, divided my community in many ways, and also caused other kinds of harm in this town. And we've talked a lot about language and law and how those things have been used as justification to perpetuate, I don't know if this is going to play. Nope. To perpetuate harm to people. But I believe that Arizona Snowball Resort has been given privilege above the law in several cases and above regulations and policy, and I've been doing quite a bit of research into this, and so that's what I'm going to talk about today. So what you're looking at here is December 2021. All of those cars on the side of the road are people, they are families, they are people who want a safe place to park and be in the snow with their families, who don't want to pay for a commercial experience, who just want to experience nature. And this goes on for about a minute, and you can see there are a lot of people there looking for a place to go. Nope. So I'm going to go back through some documents and some changes that happened at Snowball over time. And so in 2005, as has been mentioned, there was an environmental impact statement to create, that was performed on a new master development plan to create a enlarged recreational experience at Snowball, to expand runs, to add new chairlifts, to add snow play, and also to create artificial snowmaking. One of the reasons for this was in 2002, parking was prohibited along Snowball Road, and because of that, snow play activities that had occurred on the road were prohibited, and those people were shunted to Highway 180, which is what you were just looking at. And so because of that, there were numerous challenges with traffic and safety. And so one of the needs in that document was to develop a managed and professionally designed snow play and tubing facility at the ski area to fill the demonstrated public demand for snow play. So I'll get to that in a moment. So they dealt with snow play quite a bit in the 2005 EIS, actually, identifying this need and planning a new parking area that was exclusively to provide a solution for the public who needed a place to go to be safe in the snow. This area was never intended to service skiers on the slopes, and the Forest Service actually responded to commenters who were afraid that the ski slopes would become too crowded after they added this parking area by saying that parking would be a limitation to skiing, that this area would actually be prohibited for skiers, and that they didn't need to analyze any increasing daily visitation or capacity at Snowball because this parking would be off limit to them. And so I want to introduce you to a concept called Comfortable Carrying Capacity, or CCC, and this is a planning tool that the Forest Service uses when deciding how large facilities at ski resorts need to be. And so they said that the CCC wasn't going to expand. There might be more days with peak visitation that would be above the CCC level because of the artificial snowmaking that would create a more consistent ski season. But they said that they did not have to analyze the effects of increasing capacity at the resort because they didn't plan to. And they said at least 11 times in that document that they weren't going to use this parking area for skiers. Another purpose and needs statement in the 2005 EIS was that they were trying to improve safety by expanding the resort. And so they said they had a need to increase the capacity of the day lodges, chairlifts, and other ski area infrastructure, bringing it into balance with current use levels, while remaining within the ski area's approved CCC of 2,825 skiers per day. And so current use levels, they were referring to the 1979 EIS on the expansions that were done then. And they italicized that word, not me. So as I mentioned, at least 11 times in that document, they said, we're going to use parking. We're going to limit capacity at this resort, so therefore we do not need to analyze anything like increased wastewater, water consumption, energy use, traffic, etc., because we're not going to cause any of those things. They also refused to analyze using a shuttle to access the resort because they said, and parking is the only limiting factor for daily visitation, so we're not even going to analyze using a shuttle. People wanted a shuttle because they were upset about the amount of traffic on Highway 180. And this gets even deeper. So the special use permit that allows the company to operate Arizona Snowball, and we can argue a little bit about what company that should be, because the resort has technically changed ownership since this was issued, and so there should have been a new environmental assessment or environmental impact statement on the special use permit itself. But the Forest Service has gone through some manipulations, and the new owners joined Snowball Limited Partnership, which is a group that owned the resort before. So because the new owners joined that group, the Forest Service said that they don't have to do any National Environmental Policy Act analysis on a new SUP. Kind of a sidetrack there. So this SUP was written in 1992, and it says, for planning purposes, a capacity for the ski area and people at one time shall be established in the Master Development Plan, an appropriate National Environmental Policy Act document. The overall development shall not exceed that capacity without further environmental analysis documentation through the appropriate NEPA process. This wording is extremely important because the Forest Service is saying that CCC is a planning tool. It's basically just a suggestion. It's a recommendation. But the next sentence here says that they shall not exceed that capacity without further environmental analysis that is documented. And so here's the capacity that's in the 2005 Master Development Plan. Total, 2,825. That's not peak capacity, that's like the average what everything's planned to handle. So there have been a number of novel decision-making tools employed by the Forest Service over the last few years to allow expansion of capacity at Arizona Snowball. These are called supplemental information reports. We call them SEER decisions. There have been 4 supposedly, but 3 that have been made public by the Forest Service. One was for the Canyon Express chairlift and Sunset chairlift. One was on guest facilities and a pedestrian overpass. I won't discuss that one today. And the other one was to implement the construction of a parking lot. The SEERs, according to the Forest Service handbook, are supposed to be used within the scope and range of effects considered in the original analysis. The original analysis in this case is the 2005 environmental impact statement. Although these documents have been used quite a bit, I want to point out that there are also documents that have been, decisions that have been made that have had no written documentation that we can find despite repeated requests of the Forest Service. So for example, the use of a shuttle, which has been going on for several years. The Grand Canyon Express was built as a 6-seated instead of a 4-seated chairlift. Never documented. But the most egregious misuse of this decision was for this parking lot that we've discussed, was mentioned at least 11 times in the EIS. So the snowplay parking in this SEER decision was converted to skier use. There was supposed to be a parking limitation and lack of a shuttle. The lot was authorized to be 3.3 acres. The actual surface area of the lot is far larger, and if you've been out there, you'll see there's quite a bit of damage on Hart Prairie that some of our other speakers have talked about, has been documented as causing damage across Hart Prairie. It's causing erosion, runoff, drainage issues, and citizen scientists, including Richard Herford and others who have looked into this, have found, so they started doing this work in 2019. After 2020, they found litter, including masks, up to half a mile downstream of this. So people weren't wearing masks generally before 2020, so this damage was caused during that year that they were looking at it. The reasoning that was given by the Forest Service for using a SEER decision to allow the parking lot to be converted to skier use. This parking lot was supposed to be for snowplay, so they changed to allowing it for skier use, was that concerns that allowing skier use of the 400 space parking area would increase skier visitation by way of increased parking availability is considered irrelevant at this time, because parking is not the limiting factor for visitation. Over the last several years, a shuttle system has been established which decouples the previous tie between parking and visitation. So essentially the Forest Service said, because we've already lost control over how many people are up on the mountain skiing, it doesn't matter anymore. We already let the horse out of the barn. So a little while later comes this Agassiz chairlift replacement environmental assessment. And in it, in a very arbitrary and capricious manner, this new resort comfortable carrying capacity is just in this table. It's never mentioned in the document again. It's just in this one table, and it says, suddenly, 3,870. So a 37% increase with no analysis of the direct, indirect, or cumulative impact. And I will point out that SEER decisions do not have a requirement for tribal consultation. And so, on top of the fact that capacity had increased without any consultation with the tribes, and let's be serious that tribal consultation is not equal to consent, so they didn't even inform the tribes, okay? They didn't have any discussion with them at all. All of a sudden, this EA, which did have tribal consultation, has this arbitrary number in it, which was never brought up. And in fact, this quote in the middle, and I'm sorry to be reading so many things, but I think it's important that I'm giving you things in the Forest Service's own words. On the other hand, the project is the replacement of a chairlift, and having a slightly larger footprint is not designed to increase capacity or change use in the permit operations. While the project may result in an environment further away from the desired condition of the mountain for tribal nations, it does not change use or capacity in any way, and thus would not realistically result in cumulative effects to an extent that would affect tribal religious or cultural practices and beliefs in a perceptible manner. I am not a tribal member, but I'm guessing that the amount of people who are up there now is perceptible to many tribal members. And I'll even point out that the peak that they identified in the 2005 EIS was 3,400, so it was lower than what they're saying the CCC is now. And there's other things that have happened as well. So the 2005 ROD and FEIS had 5, not 6 aerial chairlifts. The Sunset chairlift was supposed to be replaced with another chairlift, but a SEER decision allowed it to stay in place. That SEER decision did not discuss the fact that the chairlift that was supposed to replace it had 1/3 of the capacity, because it was supposed to be for a half pipe. As I mentioned, the Grand Canyon Express was a 6-seated chairlift instead of 4. And then the Agassiz EA did not discuss its increased capacity. And then, of course, the shuttle. So the shuttle is operated by NAPTA, which is an entity that operates in partnership with the city of Flagstaff, and has never been analyzed. So there's a shuttle that comes from town, but there's also a shuttle that comes from the bottom of Snowball Road to the top. And what was extremely offensive was that the new parking lot was used for skiers for the first time during COVID. So while our neighbors were dealing with incredible tragedy and loss, Snowball had the audacity to greatly increase their visitation that year for the purpose of recreation while everybody else was locked down around them. They made it a policy not to answer their phones that year. It was actually on their website. And so you had to register online for the first time that year. But registering online didn't mean you got into the resort. Registering online meant you had the privilege of giving them your money. And if you got there in time to get a parking spot, including that new lot, then you could ski. If you didn't get there in time to get a parking spot, if the shuttles were running, you were sent back to town and told to try and get in the shuttle. If the shuttles were not running, you were given a coupon for a future day, where you also were not guaranteed admission, and they would not answer your phones if you called to complain. So essentially, rather than doing any kind of environmental analysis on the new capacity at Arizona Snowball, the Forest Service has created a situation where it's just allowing unlimited capacity. And it hasn't analyzed safety, it hasn't analyzed traffic, anything else. It also hasn't provided a place for all those displaced people who just want to be in the snow to go, as they were required in 2005. And what I said when I originally made this presentation is that this will likely lead to a circular argument where the resort will soon ask to expand facilities in order to keep up with its parking area and ski lift capacity, using more water and energy, producing more wastewater, handling more safety issues, and causing more traffic. And what's really funny, I don't think I put it in this presentation, but the new master development plan that Snowball recently submitted to the Forest Service has a purpose and need statement that is almost identical to the past one, saying that we need to expand our facilities to meet current need, and it's actually italicized again. So what are some of these things that are that need to be analyzed? There's safety, there's increased impacts to the mountain, there's damage to the meadow ecosystem, energy use, wastewater production, traffic, wildlife, plants, more, all need to be analyzed. Nobody can tell me what the capacity is on their septic system. It's buried. So what's going on there? I would love to know. Well, I don't want to know, but. So there was this US 180 traffic study done a few years ago. And on page 1 it says to improve its services, Snowball's upgrading facilities, adding this parking lot, and this will increase attendance and vehicular traffic on Snowball Road and US 180. So this was a metropolitan study. Yes, we're going to increase traffic. And then this is a study that was just done a couple of years ago, 2018, by ADOT and NAPTA. They wanted to know if they were actually having an effect on traffic by having this shuttle. Well, they found out that they weren't. They said that the shuttle is not likely to be effective at mitigating traffic problems unless there's other things like limiting parking or charging for parking, things that would make people not want to get in cars or make people want to put more people per car. And so they said the majority of riders have used the service between the bottom of Snowball Road and the top. So therefore they were having no impact on 180 congestion. They say Mountain Express has not been able to help reduce congestion, that they meet an imposition of parking supply constraints. Why is this important? This is extremely important because recently the Forest Service supervisor who is in charge of consultation with the tribes, when queried on whether capacity was being allowed to increase, actually issued his own little report where he said, well, we analyzed capacity in the Agassiz chairlift decision. That's the decision that said we don't need to analyze capacity because we're not increasing it. And that Arizona Snowball has figured out ways to increase its attendance without causing any effects on the community, such as the shuttle that has decreased traffic. So we put that all in writing without, evidently, I'm the only one reading these documents? I don't know. So I'm glad to share them all with you. What's even better is that Snowball's own attendees are getting really upset. They are seeing safety concerns on the runs. They think they're overcrowded. They are annoyed with the traffic. So these things that supposedly aren't perceptible to the tribes are perceptible to the people who are visiting there and supposedly enjoying their day. And so there's things, the place was so overcrowded, it's clear they sold too many tickets. It's so obvious that they're expanding inside and their facility isn't expanding with it. They should shut down purchases online after enough sell. After 6 a.m., they were already packed. The slopes are so crowded. This place was not built to accommodate hundreds of people at a time. There needs to be some kind of ticket limit. I used to think going to Disneyland was the most glorified way to pay to wait in line, but then I experienced Arizona Snowball. So I'm going to put forward a list of what I think are solutions, and I realize that I approach these things from a little bit of a legalistic and policy standpoint. These are not necessarily what the tribes would put forward, but these are my suggestions. One is that they need to follow the rules, like the rest of us do. And so perform a NEPA analysis on all the changes made since 2005 that weren't in the 2005 EIS. All of these things need to be analyzed together because they all have cumulative effects, and that's what the National Environmental Policy Act requires that we do. On a broader scale, we need to change consultation to consent. When it comes to sacred sites, we need consultation to be consent. We need a unified strategy for analysis in the master development plan. So we need to consider things like climate change, we need to consider things like impacts on the community, and that includes impacts on health, water, affordable housing, traffic, etc. They should be adhering to promises made in the past, and so the capacity should be capped at what it was approved in 2005, which was actually the 1979 levels. We need to require online registration for skiers, including season pass holders. And the reason I put this here is because there was outrage last year about how many people were on the slopes at Vail Resorts. And Vail Resorts decided that they are going to limit the capacity on their slopes this year. The problem is that they say, except that their season pass holders will not be affected. I think that they need to just cap capacity, period. We have the technology now to have people register online. Snowball needs to take responsibility on their impact on traffic. And so if they built a ski resort and damaged Hart Prairie in the name of giving people a safe place to park and play with their families, they should be forced to revert that parking lot back to a place for people to safely park. I, as a Flagstaff resident, can't go up there and access the mountain. All of our tribal neighbors in this town can't go up on the mountain and access because of Snowball's operation. We deserve a safe place to park, all of us. There shouldn't be shuttle buses because of all the reasons we already discussed. That is my contact. I invite anybody who wants to talk to me about this to contact me.